Hi, I'm Andy Collin from Happy Trails Animation. We're a local studio in Portland, Oregon, and have been in business with my wife here running the show for about over 10 years.
My name's Amy Collin, and I'm an art director with Happy Trails Animation, and I'm also a partner.
Hi, I'm Dan Tierney, and I'm the lead animator at Happy Trails Animation.
My name is Chad Esley. I'm an animator. I work with Happy Trails Animation.
Being a smaller studio, an independent studio, we've had to adapt, and part of adapting is bringing in technology, learning, finding, testing, and always sort of being on that edge. In other words, most of the bigger studios wait for people like me to test it and then go, oh, is that good? What do you think about that? And then all of a sudden they go out and get it. So I always have to be on the edge testing stuff, and as an independent small studio, that's where, if you're going to go anywhere, that's where you have to be.
Well, I think that neither Andy or I are particularly interested in animation methods that show off the method itself. I mean, we aren't real fans of the ultra polished, gosh, you can tell a computer made that, or we like to hide filters. Like, there are some processing filters that save time, and we use a little of that, but we always go in there and grunge it up by hand so that you can't tell. You know, we just aren't interested in looking like a machine did it. We want it to look like we did it. And so people that come to Happy Trails are usually looking for something that has that hands-on feel to it, that you can tell a human was involved in the creation of it.
We have always been a studio that's always done organic and very human feeling animation. Our animation's not typical Warner Brothers. We do that, but everybody can do that because that's what everybody's copying. So for us, our interests have been into how can we push the mediums, what organic influences can we throw into the artwork.
Happy Trails Animation runs the gamut in styles. That's one of the things that drew me most to them, is that I wasn't going to be simply a cog on a wheel in this big machine, that I was going to be able to do everything, that I would be able to be the cleanup artist, the storyboard artist, work on the backgrounds, that I was going to be with a small team that was really passionate about what they were doing. The style of each project was going to change. Every project that I've seen or been involved with so far has been drastically different.
The way Happy Trails Animation has been able to survive competition with the big boys is basically going from film. There's no way to compete. You can't compete. But the minute you can then create in a computer, you can now compete. So for instance, instead of having 4 cameras, I can have 1 camera, three computers, and all of a sudden I've got myself a whole production company.
I have some pretty strong opinions about technology and the artist and how those two things combine together. And my favorite artist type person to bump into is quite rare, and I happen to know that we have a few on staff, of which we're really appreciative, is the person who can look at technology as a tool and look at ways to maneuver that technology into what it is they want to do, as opposed to the other way around.
Of all the things in art, I like to draw with a pencil. I like to create with a pencil. It's like thought on paper, that tactile sense of actually literally doing it, and it's tangible. I could feel it. I could pick up a sheet of paper after I had drawn it. I could pin it up on the wall. I could look at it. It was almost like an illustration in each frame, and for some reason that just really connected with me, and I couldn't get into the computer because I lost that complete tactile sense. It felt away from me. It didn't feel like it was an extension of me.
A lot of artists have kind of shied away from digital art as a medium simply because they feel like they are not touching the work themselves. It's sort of disjointed and disconnected, whether they're doing that with a mouse, whatever way they're creating their digital art. It's been a little difficult.
When I came to Happy Trails, virtually everything that we did was hand-drawn. It was done by hand, and then we scanned it in the computer to work with those original hand drawings digitally. And then everything after that was done digitally. The cleanup, the inks, the post-production, all the effects that we needed to do. That time where you were working in the physical world and then transferring it into the digital world was a complete waste of time.
when you talk about the business of Happy Trails and how we succeed, it really comes down to how can you cut costs? In other words, can I compete with some of the bigger studios and bring the costs down?
And the way that we're ahead of the curve on this is, it occurred to us, let's get it into the computer, we don't need to scan. That saves us well over $5,000.
The process that has enabled us to do it all on the computer now is the addition of these Wacom Cintiq tablets and the addition of Mirage software, because what basically we have done is we've taken Photoshop, Painter, merged them together with After Effects to get Mirage, and then the interface that gives us the power to deal with the pressure sensitivity and the feeling like we are on a light table is this Cintiq. It's amazing.
Well, the more technology progresses, the more elaborate your ideas get. It's kind of like, you know, the age-old thing that your ideas rise to the ability of what it is you have around you. So, if nothing else, our approaches have just gotten more and more elaborate, like as to how to push the realm of what's possible.
We got to work with the Wacom Cintiq, which has a bunch of tools that really bridge the gap between digital animation that is done entirely in the computer and animation that's done by hand on paper.
The tablet is basically an animation disc. You're really drawing right on an old animation disc, so you are bringing back the days of Disney in a garage working on an animation disc. You're bringing it back with these tablets, and what's more natural to an animator than to work that way? I don't know.
The Cintiq is far more intuitive than any other device I've ever come across. The greatest thing about this, the Cintiq, is that I can see what I'm working on, and my hand, I feel as if I'm touching every aspect of the artwork. Not only that, but in the digital world, I can get in and do very close detail work. I know that my pointer, my cursor, whatever program I'm working in, is right on the object I'm working with. It's right under my pen. It's totally real time.
I found that very quickly I liked the Wacom Cintiq much better than I liked a light table. I found that when I was working on a light table, the easiest thing for me to do was to get a single peg bar that wasn't attached to anything and then work on a very large light table, because it gave me the freedom to move it wherever I wanted to. And I felt that the normal light tables didn't quite give me that.
Here I've got a large board. I can literally rest my arms on it if I want to. I can tilt the thing. I can lean my whole hand on the screen without worrying about really scratching it up or marking up the surface. The surface itself is more paper-like, and the pen actually glides across the surface. Past input devices I've used have been either too slippery, or they've just been a little odd, or even the glass on them have been a little thick.
I sketch entirely in the computer now, which I never did before. I find myself changing my entire train of thought and how I approach a given project, because before, even if I had to work in the computer, I would hold that off as long as I possibly could because I didn't enjoy it. It felt so distant. And with this, it's the first place that I go to sit down. I almost do my entire thinking right on the Wacom Cintiq. I can feel it, the pen tool feels it. It's almost exciting is what it is.
The Cintiq really excels in being the closest thing to drawing on paper that I've ever experienced as a cartoonist and as an animator as well. It's really a great device.
I mean, it's really an environment that's created so that it feels physical and real for an artist who really likes to work physically. But at the same time, it gives me every advantage that the digital world can possibly give me. When you're working in the developmental stage where you don't really know, you're trying to create an environment, entirely every detail of it, exactly what it looks like in 3 dimensions, you make a lot of mistakes, especially when you're working with a collaborative team. Everybody's putting their thoughts in, and things are changing constantly.
And so, we're always looking for ways to be able to speed things along, but get a really, tight, good-looking product. We're, doing things that makes the life of the people that are working at the studio more productive. We don't have to have this person who's just sitting there day in and day out doing, hundreds and hundreds of hours. scanning, that person can be drawing, cleaning up frames in the computer, tweaking, which is my favorite thing. Anything that allows us to cut off enough time doing anything else, this is a waste of time, and gets us in there where we can really tweak and make things even better, that's a huge benefit. As an art director, that'd be my favorite thing. That more than justifies the purchase of a Cintiq. And, once again, we're cutting edge.
I actually enjoy drawing more on the Wacom Cintiq than I do drawing on paper, which I never thought was going to happen. And so that sheer enjoyment of it, I know speeds up my work. I have so much fun literally just drawing into it that I lose myself in drawing it. It's really an amazing feeling.
There is no difference now. There used to be how many wheels did you have, how much film did you have, what kind of cameras were you shooting on. Now, everybody has a Cintiq, everybody has a computer. It's all creativity, it's all inspiration, it's all concept. You have a great concept and a great character, you're going to sell it. It doesn't matter how big you are, how small you are. That's what's going to make it happen. And with the advancements that are out now, levels the playing field. It's awesome.
Albeit in Sketchbook Pro or Painter or say Photoshop, one of the great things is that these companies have sort of tracked Wacom's progress specifically, I believe, and implemented the pressure sensitivity into their tools. So if I'm in Painter or if I'm in Photoshop and I want a really light touch, if I want to airbrush an area, if I want to add just a touch of color or a specific little brush stroke to a drawing, I can do that with the Cintiq because it's so pressure sensitive.
A lot of the projects at Happy Trails that I've worked on so far, we've used Flash for. We use it for more than it probably should be. A lot of people feel that Flash is used for limited animation, and we have been doing full-on animation directly in Flash. With the Wacom Cintiq and the pressure sensitivity that the pen gives me, when I'm working in Flash, I can get such a varied line. Flash allows you to, the harder you press with the pen, the thicker, the wider the line, the lighter, the thinner the line. So you get almost like a painterly quality.
Flash is an excellent program. I use Flash from everything to designing buttons for web, for the internet, to full cell animation. In fact, it's one of my favorite animation programs is Flash because you can fill up, you can work with 100 frames and you can just draw. And the greatest thing is it's got a light table. So when you're sketching and you're just creating your animation, you're not really worried about a lot of the hindrances that you have with paper. You've got eraser dust, you've got to stop and erase, and you're dealing with eraser dust and all that sort of thing. With the Cintiq, you don't really have to worry about that. There's a pressure sensitivity control built into Flash. You tap that and you get a thick and thin variance on your line. So when you're putting down a brush stroke in Flash and you apply more pressure, you get a nice thicker line. So it really allows you to do a drawing that's a little more unique and a little closer to something you use in real life.
Mirage is a software that we at Happy Trails are mostly using for effects animation, straight traditional animation. You can do a lot of things with it that you could use with Photoshop. However, with Mirage, it takes it a couple steps further. You can illustrate just a flat one frame and use that as an illustration, a graphic design, and use their tools in Mirage to get you where you need with one given illustration. Or very easily you can turn that into an animation to where you're using it exactly like you would work on traditional animation, working frame by frame, jumping from frames using extremes and breakdowns and in-betweening. I mean, the process is almost exactly the same, except for it's kept a lot cleaner, being that it's completely digital.
Actually, I believe Mirage comes from the Amiga, which is where I sort of started in animation. Amigas used to be some of the only computers that could display graphics in real time, sequences of images. And I believe Mirage used to be TV Paint, so I was already a little familiar with the program when it came around, and now Bauhaus has bought it and it's called Mirage, and they've actually updated it quite a bit. It will do film resolution. I use Mirage to load up sequences of film resolution quality or HD quality images and edit them. You can actually animate in the program. It's a complete bitmap program. There are no vectors, so to me that means when I'm animating or sketching in it, it gives you a nice pencil-y or sketchy quality to your line that you couldn't really get out of Flash or a vector-based program.
On different projects or working with different characters, especially on the last project that I worked with, every character had a different line quality. You know, one was a very thick, fat line, you know, around every, you know, detail that the character had. The other was a thinner, scratchy line. And very easily, I could get both those lines. I could jump from one character to the other without having to change a tool, without having to change a pencil, without having to go across to another part of the studio to get specific tools. I had every tool that I needed directly, you know, at my disposal at all times, which was really nice. It sped up the process so much, and literally I could continue that train of thought that I need while I'm animating. The whole flow of going from, you know, one frame to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next, and really keeping track of exactly what I'm doing becomes so much easier. And as you're working on animation, usually you're jumping from so many different things that you tend to have your train of thought jumbled a little bit. When everything's right there in front of you, it makes it so much easier to keep track of, and it's really nice.
Another unique thing that Mirage has brought in, that Mirage brings, is the something called the Anim brush, which is an animated brush. And if I've drawn a walk cycle, let's say of a person walking, and that walk cycle is 16 frames, and I think, well, I want to reposition that guy walking, and I want to have him walk across the screen. Well, with Mirage, you can use the Anim brush feature. You can capture that man walking, and you can rescale him and stamp him back down again. So essentially, you capture the entire sequence of animation. It's on the end of your paintbrush, and you just position the paintbrush and you stamp him down. Every time you stamp him down, the animation on the end of your brush advances. So you can create multiple animations this way and sort of have a little more freedom in what you're doing with that animation you've created. You can do that automatically, or you can literally paint an animation with your brush, which is pretty great.
All right, well, right now I'm going to take you through one of our last projects that we had for a client at Happy Trails Animation. The character name is Doggo. He's a character that we don't have to worry about backgrounds because he's going to be thrown into different environments with different effects and things like that, but the client wants to have total control of that part. So our given assignment on this project was to simply animate the character Doggo to a specific sound bite that he gives us, and basically the animation ended up looking like this, to where we have him singing, you know, with a little action, and he's bouncing around and stuff like that. This process, how it starts out is we will go through the extremes of the rough animation, where we'll have this pose, this pose, this pose. You know, we've got all of these given poses where it's the most extreme movement someone can possibly have, and that your character is going to have in the given scene. The next step then is to break these down, to add a little bit more life to the drawings. Again, staying very rough. All they need to be is registering shapes that someone can tell exactly what the movement's going to be. We don't need to add detail yet, or secondary motion, or anything like that. But basically we draw a halfway point in between our extremes. And at each step of this, we get the approval of the art director, so that we are going in exactly the direction the client wants. After we've got the breakdowns and the extremes finished, then you go through the very rough in-betweening, where we're adding the little details so he actually moves correctly, and it's kind of along the lines of the whole thing's played through and you kind of know what's going on. We can show it to the director. All the movement is there, the pacing is there, everything is there, just what we need. Then to finish off this project, you go through and simply color each frame, going frame by frame, you know, clicking, filling, clicking, filling. It's a very simple process, especially with the Wacom Cintiq. And then the very, very, very final thing that you do would simply be to double check it with your art director and just make sure that none of the little tiny details are missing, and that it's exactly what the client wants. And then basically the first thing that we do is we keyframe everything out. We kind of see where along the lines that we're going to want the character to be placed in the scene, the poses that he's going to do, you know, kind of what he's going to look like. And then it's just simply a matter of drawing. Let me pull up my windows. This entire project is done in Flash, which is a vector-based program. That's kind of one of the reasons why we're actually working in Flash is because he specifically wanted vector-based images to work with. And being that as it may, we end up giving the client exactly what he wants. So basically I'm going to just start out kind of posing the character exactly where I want him. Giving him his body shape, looking where his shoulders are going to be placed. Again, all of this is very, very rough. Most times I won't even add in ears or things like that. You know, throwing the pose, he's holding a microphone, so getting a feel for exactly where the character is placed, and drawing in the Wacom Cintiq and the pressure sensitivity is just unbelievable. It's so much fun to the different line qualities that you can get and the feelings that you can, you know, that line, that expressive line is just a blast. Again, I'm throwing on the backlighting that Flash has so that I can go back through and see exactly where I'm drawing. That's a given frame. Hop into the next frame that I need to pose out the next keyframe, and kind of get an idea of where I want him to go. He's going to bounce up to the side over here, so I'll draw a line of action of where his head's going to go. He's going to come out here. I'm going to angle his body. Again, the whole process of what we're doing right now is basically keyframing. We're going to get a rough idea of the action. The drawings are going to be very, very rough. I mean, as you can see, you know, from the drawings, you can kind of get a sense of where he's moving to, but it really has no details of any kind. It has just kind of the generic shape of the character, you know, and kind of the general poses that he's going through. Half the times I won't even put hands on the character. Hands, ears, hair, clothing, all these are secondary emotions, and right now for what I'm doing at this stage, they're not really important. So I'm just posing out. I'm going to bring this pose, I want him to come back into this pose, so I'm just going to copy that one over. You know, and right now we've got him going out into a pose, and then he's coming back. Then I'm going to want him to bounce up. He's going to come back into that pose, and then he's going to bounce up into a very elongated pose where he's and there's the front side of his face. This is where his nose is going to be. Bring the mic up. We're going to pull him in real tight. Just kind of give him a nice little fun movement for him to do with his little mic as he's kind of dancing and singing around. So again, then I'll just go playback kind of through the animation. I can see kind of where he's going to be going. He's going to come up out of that original pose, and he's going to come back into this pose right here. I'm going to want to change this up and give him... Again, the whole time you're just kind of playing with how you want the character to move. So he's going to come back up, and then he's going to bounce into that. And we're going to have him bounce down. So we're going to basically make him go out, come back in, he's going to bounce down, and he's going to be all doing this to the beat of the music. So it'll essentially look like he's singing, kind of dancing, giving a good feel of the character bouncing around. It's kind of a fun little scene, giving the client, just a lot of little animation tricks that he should really like. And then I'll have him bounce down again using the reverse curve. You kind of see me putting this line in each time. It gives me a sense of the arc of his body. As I'm going to bounce him down, I'm going to angle his body differently. Maybe bring his arm out here to the side, and we've got the microphone. Now, his body's going to be up and behind him, but still got the nose right there. His face, again, his ears are going to be off up here, but I'm not going to worry about them because they're a secondary animation, and I'm not going to even bother attempting those kind of things until I've got the flow of the body, the main portions of the animation already complete. So then again, I just play back through. He's going to go out, he's going to come up, he's going to bounce down. I'll have him come up again real quick. But this being just a little bit more subtle, because I don't want it to be repetitious. I want it to be, constantly changing up. Giving something a little bit different to see each time, so the animation doesn't really get stale. I'll bounce him up again. I don't really like that. I'll just erase it really quick. One of the advantages of working digitally is you can erase things so much more quickly. If I want to use another frame again and be able to play through, I can just copy and paste it, the pressure sensitivity. And using the Wacom Cintiq, I still get the feel of normal drawing and kind of that feeling, but I have all the advantage of the digital world, being very efficient with everything that I'm doing. So it's awful nice. And then I'm going to just give him an end pose. I'm going to drop him not quite so far down as this pose, but do want to kind of see that as reference. So I'm going to drop him down just a little bit, reverse his body again, a little bit more straight than last time. Again, even though he's generally going into the same poses, I'm changing it up just a little bit so it's not stale, it's not repetitious and things like that. And doing in Flash, one of the nice things in Flash, as you make any mistakes, you can simply undo using the keyboard, or I've got the pen tool selected to where this button on the top of the pen, I can just simply click and it'll erase for me. And it's nice that Flash allows you to really go through and erase easily. And then Wacom's just up the ante with making it so accessible for you at all times. But I'll at this kind of stage in the game, I'll generally turn off the backlighting for Flash, and I'll just kind of play through the animation to kind of get a sense of exactly what's going on. And if I kind of like where this is at in these extremes, I'll then go get the art director, have them take a look at it and see if they want any changes or anything like that. And we won't move on to the next step until I've kind of given them exactly what they want. Once that's done, once I've got the approval on the existing keyframes I've done, go back through and start doing breakdowns, which is basically one in between of each of the extremes. Basically, when I'm doing the breakdowns, the purpose of them are just to give me a little bit more of an idea of exactly where the animation is going. Put an extra frame in here. It can be just about anywhere because Flash allows you to adjust things so easily that I never even really pay attention to where I put it. This stage in the game, I just want to be able to see both drawings. And that's all that's really important. Right now, I'm going to continue this animation, maybe anticipate a secondary motion right there that I might want to do. Again, drawing the body and the arms, looking at exactly where they're probably going to want to go, masking out the shoulders. I'm not looking for details, I'm just looking for a feeling. Again, this is just so I can either show the art director or the art director can show the client, and at any stage of the animation, they can feel like they know exactly what's going on. They can envision the animation and what it's going to look like. And then basically this process simply continues as I draw the breakdowns for the rest of this short animation. You know, we're going through just, you know, reposing things out, making sure everything's probably going to flow correctly, using the animation fundamentals, you know, that are kind of secondhand now that I learned in college, you know, such as the reverse curve and line of action, you know, in betweening it. You want to kind of anticipate the movement of the character so that you can very quickly add nice little touches that are just extras that the client's probably going to maybe not even know that you're doing, but it's going to add just a touch of class to the animation, and probably they're really going to like. So we're going to add another breakdown there. Working a little bit more specifically now. As we bounce up into this next breakdown, you know, I've never been able to animate so smoothly, so easily, so roughly, and as I have been when I'm using the Wacom Cintiq. It's just a lot of fun. You can get everything that you can out of just normal drawing, but then you have all the advantages, again, of the digital world. You know, the undos, the smooth drawings, you know, and being that it's a little bit new, I mean, been drawn for 20-odd years. It's also really exciting and fun and just adds an element that I just really like. So just kind of getting a sense of the action. Animators, when they're drawing by hand, will flip through their drawings physically to where they've developed a method to where it's almost a flip book. They'll take 5, 6, 7 drawings and they'll flip through them really quickly to get a sense of the action. And I can do the same thing here just by moving the cursor back and forth in Flash, and you can kind of see exactly what the character is going to be moving like. It makes it very nice. We're going to add a couple more breakdowns. You should be able to start to see, even though this looks like a bunch of scribbles, you know, in any given frame, and you may not be able to differentiate body parts or you know, where his head starts or it finishes because it's so messy. As you go back through and play it through, you can see exactly what's going on, and everything starts to make sense. And you can see how, even though an incredibly rough drawing, when you're looking at a given frame, when it's played through, it makes sense, it looks good, the director can still follow it. So we're just going to see here this next bounce is more of a forward looking for the character. Animation is kind of interesting in the fact that there are very easy theories and philosophies to follow. They're as simple as, you know, a bouncing ball and what in fact happens to the bouncing ball as it moves. You can apply that to the most complicated animation in the world and it still follows that same very simple theory of simply the squash and stretch. And you find that no matter where you go or what you're animating, you will always end up right back at the bouncing ball. And we're almost done here with the breakdowns. I don't really like that. So just go back through and maybe hook that up a different way. And we're going to play through that just real quick and see if we like it. Didn't quite know if that... we're going to have to work on this drawing right here. Didn't quite work out in the animation. And again, this is going to happen a lot. I mean, this is trial and error. You're basically creating the movement of a character, and you don't really know exactly how well it's going to work until you start roughing it out. So we'll simplify that a little bit. Maybe it's a little bit in the body. Maybe we're not quite happy with where the body looks. Easiest way to tell, we'll just erase the body. I decided that I didn't like the placement of the head. So instead of redrawing it, I'm simply going to move it. See if that plays through. Yeah, I like that a little bit better. Not much, but I do like that. So again, I'm just gonna move it a little bit. Very easy, very quick. I'm not erasing, I don't have to redraw anything. You know what, and I really like that. I think that'll work. Yeah, I'm going to take a look at that. I think that's kind of the direction that I want to take this. You know, again, very rough, but I would go get the art director, get the director. They would come in, they would take a look at it. They would say, well, you know, the timing's not quite right here. We may want to change this pose up a little bit here, maybe add a little bit of bounce, and then I'll explain to them, you know, where the animation is going specifically, like how the secondary action is going to affect, you know, things in the primary action of any given character. And we'll kind of work through that process until we're both happy exactly, so we know exactly where each of us stands and we can kind of foresee where the project is going. And then I'll go to the next stage of the game, which is in-betweening the animation. And again, this whole process of just the extremes, the breakdowns, will end up getting you to this process right here, which is, you know, that given animation. And you can see the rough underneath it. And it's kind of got that same motion. As I play through it, the movements kind of mimic. You can see exactly where it's going to go. As you kind of figure out people in your studio, like as I work more and more with my art director, we can almost picture the same thing in our heads. We can picture that finished product at this stage of the game, and that's kind of what you're going for. That's kind of where you want to be at, so that you in fact can work this way, work this quick, this easy. Now I'm just going through and adding frames. Where if I'm going to animate something on 2s or 4s or however that it's designated to be animated on, I'll go through and put those number of frames in just by using the command key on the keyboard of F6, and it'll just slot in frames really easy. Flash does make that very easy to work. Then I can go back through and literally in between the animation that I have. And as I see it now, the process then just simply repeats itself. I'm going to go back through roughly drawing where everything's going to go. The hands, the shoulders, the arms, the body. Again, this stays very rough because we're basically looking for timing. We're looking for a sense of action. And as you can probably see, I'm working in really very basic shapes. Most of them are circles or squares or rectangles. And that's really all you need at this point. I mean, I basically know the shape of the character, and that's kind of all that's important to me right now, because I want to get a sense of timing. At this stage in the animation, we're beginning the in-betweening process, and again, that's basically the exact same process as the breakdowns, except for now we're looking for a little bit more of the specifics. The drawings stay rough, but you're looking for details in the movement, how you want their arm to move in any given circumstance, their hands to be angled, where their forearms are going to be the overlapping action of if their arm are going to come in front of their body, things like that. This is kind of the details of all the movements that you need to get. And as we kind of play back, now you kind of see everything. And then we're going to need to just add a few more frames in here. And there we go. Just delete out a couple of these. The in-betweening process is what a lot of people kind of regard as tedious, that you're just basically, you're drawing ever so subtle changes, on an entire drawing for just the tiniest little bit of changing. But, as you kind of get into the animation, it's more of a labor of love than anything else, because you're creating a two-dimensional drawing that is going to move. And it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. But here we're going to go to this frame, do another breakdown, and in between, again, I'm drawing the arcs, staying rough. It's important to kind of understand the movement of things and the movement of a body, and how it's actually going to function. And the importance of that is so that you can make something look realistic if you want, but every exaggeration, even when you're looking at something that's very rubbery, very unrealistic, it's based off of reality. It's just an exaggerated movement of exactly what would happen. And that's why, even though you know it's not possible, it's still believable in a sense that you're thinking, okay, you know, he actually did that. And as we go through, this process of in-betweening and I get segments done, again, I'm still going back to the art director as often as I can to make sure that I'm giving them exactly what I want, because you don't want to be wasting time. Time is really against you usually when you're doing this. You have a very short amount of time to do a lot, and that's, you know, one of the biggest benefits of the Wacom Cintiq is that it saves you so much time. I mean, as you see what I'm doing here, imagine every single one of these having to be scanned in individually, you know, named individually, put in their appropriate folders. It just takes a lot of time away from the important things that you really ought to be doing, which is animating. You know, and you can kind of get a sense of the animation then. It'll go through and he comes back, and we repeat this process through the entire animation. And once we finish this in-betweening process, you know, once again, we've gone through the extremes, then we break down the extreme drawings, and then we in-between to try to smooth out that animation to give a much better sense of exactly how it's going to move. The next stage after in-betweening would be then to go back in and fill in the details of exactly what you want it to look like. You know, this is an example. I've gone back through, I've put the ears in, the hands in, you know, things like that. You see the mic, the digits of the fingers, the hands, the shirt, you know, the little scruff of his beard. You know, basically that's the process that we would work now. You know, I would come through and I know the shape of his head, working with his character quite a bit. His nose comes down across. His eyes are going to be along there, add the scruff of his beard, and we're going to add his ears, his neck, his shoulders, and the shirt. Again, this stays fairly rough at this stage as well, because we're doing another rough animation on top of the existing animation. This, just getting a little bit more detail, a little bit further along to see exactly where the animation is going. This way I can tell exactly where the nose is going to be, where the eyes are registered and things like that. Once you finish adding just those rough details, then you jump, we'd add another layer, come over here, just add another layer. And this, at this stage of the game, is where the Wacom Cintiq really helps you out more than you can possibly imagine. We're on a second layer now. This is where we're going to go back through and do some detail work. I'd come through. One of the things that I've found is if I lighten this layer underneath, that may be a little light. It'll give the illusion. I don't have to worry about those lines. I can see exactly what lines I need. Now I'm going to go back through and really work the detail. That still may be a little much. We're going to go 200. Yes. See, we like that. Right there. The rotation of this, though, the Wacom Cintiq, is really what makes it a next level tool for animation. Arcs are very easy. If you're right-handed, arc sweeping this way across the Wacom Cintiq are very, very easy to do. And if I need to get a reverse curve, I can simply rotate the Wacom Cintiq to allow for that, to still get that very smooth, that even arc. You know, I've got that very freeing motion. I can bring this across, and we're going to add those details that we need. Put in his nose, give his jawline. And the beard. Now again, basically we're just all the things that you expect to see on the character, we can go back through and add those details. Create the rest of the character, if you were. Now, mask off where the eyes are going to go. We still want them there. You know, maybe work in the details of the hands. Add the mic. For this particular character, I'm still staying a little rough with my drawings, simply because that's the way the character is animated. That's the line quality of this given character. If the character had a very smooth line and a very detailed line, you know, I would have to go back through, and this process would be much more detailed. It would be a little bit slower. I'd make sure that the curves are exactly where I need it. The thickness of the line is exactly where it needs to be, but that's not really needed for this given character. I can show you exactly where this process will take it. I'll take those very rough drawings, do exactly what I'm doing right now, adding those details in, and where that will get us is right here. The end result of adding those details in, we get something along this line. You know, the eyes all usually separate out onto a different layer, but you'll get this kind of a feel where everything's inked, the details are in there. You can see the lines very roughed, but everything reads very well. I would then go and double check with the art director and make sure that they okayed all the details. They would double check, you know, again, the line quality. They would look at the secondary actions that we've put in on, like the ears and the hair and the shirt and stuff. And you know, once that is okayed, usually they'll check it with the client, because at this stage, as you can see, basically everything is there that we need. I mean, it's all inked. You know, the animation is there. They can see it. It simply doesn't have its color and its, you know, the pupils of the eyes, the small little details like the shadows off the shirt. But everything's there. This is exactly what it's going to look like. The client can see if they specifically like all the details that we've put in. And once we get that okay, we move on to the final process, which would then just be coloring. Coloring in Flash, for example, the end product would be what you see here. How you do that is very simple. How, for this particular project, given that it has a little bit more detail, it's got a lot of the shadows and things like that that you see throughout. He's got details on his nose and a little light going across his eyes. How I would do it, I would go back and literally just click and fill, like I'll show you right now. We get the color that we want. You click up here on the fill button, and you simply click and fill. And this, again, with the Wacom Cintiq, makes it very efficient. I mean, as fast as you can move your hand across the screen is as fast as you can color. I mean, basically it's click, 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 and you can go through it very quickly. When you've got the mouse, again, you've got that differentiation of looking at a screen and holding a mouse, so that it's not that it's difficult, it's just not as efficient as possible. This is such a much more efficient way to quickly go through that it just makes it very, very, very nice. I'll take you through basically what this whole animation looks like again, just to kind of show you, the end result of everything. We'll play through. You can see kind of the secondary motion off of the ears and the hands and arms as he bounces around and stuff like that. And this project was entirely done in the digital format. It was entirely done on the Wacom Cintiq. It was incredibly nice because it was so much cleaner for me to work digitally. I had so much more use of all the tools that I would normally really want to have use of. I wasn't wasting a lot of time transferring from the physical world into the digital world by scanning drawings. It allowed me to change things very easily by manipulating the drawings, moving pieces around here or there if something wasn't working correctly. The quick keys that Flash allows me to use, help me out a tremendous by moving around the drawings if I want, scrolling through the frames very quickly, using the key commands to add frames or undo parts of the drawing. So really it ended up saving me quite a bit of time from what the normal process that I had been working on before I had the Cintiq. And working completely digitally is such a more efficient way for me to be going through and doing the animation, especially in software such as Mirage or Flash or things like that. They really work well together to allow me to save time, to get a high quality piece of animation done for a client, to give checks from the art director to the client, for them to check all the work to make sure it's going in the exact direction. It's easy to communicate because it's already all completely digital, so I can simply export the file and email it so it can be entirely done over the internet. Even the pencil test, which is incredibly unusual. We never were able to do that before. And all in all, it saves a tremendous amount of time, doing every aspect of the animation.
This is a film called Winter that I'm working on with Andy Collin at Happy Trails, and he gave me a series of frames here, and I believe I've got about 300 frames of animation, which was drawn by hand in pencil, and then every frame of that animation was inked using felt tip pens, I believe. I'm not sure, but really inked, really beautifully illustrated, and then scanned, every frame scanned into the computer. So I believe we've got 24 frames per second, 24 images per second flowing by here to get our film. Yeah, once this is all in the computer and we're looking at it sort of, we look at the animation at speed, we actually have this, we can key through it and see any errors in the animation, and we use the Cintiq to sort of mimic the pen and ink that was done originally on paper. We can easily correct in the computer without having to go back, find that original drawing, re-ink it, rescan it, and insert it into the sequence. All those steps are eliminated because we can just key through everything that's already been scanned and mimic what was done on paper really easily. And actually I can show you that right now. I've got the entire sequence loaded up here, and what I'm doing is I'm keying frame by frame, and I noticed that there is a little bit of this window that is uncolored here, and there it is right there. If I back up, there's the frame, the bottom part of this window. So what I usually do in Mirage is I zoom in a couple of steps, and I navigate over to where that is at, and I zoom way in to where I can actually even see pixels. But I'll pick a tool that is usually the pen brush, and I have it set at like a 1.5 size, and I've got it set up so the size of the brush depends on the pressure using the Cintiq, and also the power at which it lays down the ink is set to be variable using pressure. So if I actually just drag really lightly across the screen, I get a more gray tone, and I can undo that stroke here, but I've set it up so I've got a stroke that looks pretty similar to a felt tip pen, and actually looks just like it. So I can go in and sort of just mimic what the artist has already done on paper, and I can go back and sort of check my work, make sure it looks similar, and I just zoom out And if I zoom out, you can see that that little fix took place. I was able to do that really easily. So I'll just keep keying forward and looking for, you guys saw another one up here. Keep keying through. Here we have this little girl peering out of the window. Oh, and I saw one right there. There we go. And what I'll do is I'll just kind of mimic. And actually, if I feel like another cool thing you can do, if you're going to be a cheater about it, or if you just feel like, oh, I just don't want to draw that exactly, I want to steal artwork from a previous frame. This is another trick that animators use. What I can do is select this lasso tool, and I can just go to a previous frame. Oops, this lasso tool, and I can grab some lines, and those are now on the end of my paintbrush, and I can key forward and kind of drop those in place. And I can hit the X key, I believe, and flip that image, drop it down sort of right there, and I'll use the pen brush tool to kind of fill in the remainder and kind of make that up. And it'll be so seamless in the end, you won't be able to tell the difference, hopefully. And just like that. And if I zoom out, full frame, and I key backwards, and then I key forward, you won't even see my fix in there. Looks exactly like what we had. And actually I see this little fringe here disappearing. And I'm going to go in and draw that using the Cintiq here. Oop. Okay, zoom back in. So I have all this fringe. And actually, I think, yeah, I'm going to just draw that in. Another thing that Mirage has is a great light table. So I can turn that on and actually see the previous frame that I was working on. I turn that light table on, and as you can see, I've got a nice ghost image of the previous frame. So I can kind of guess where those little bits of fringe might be and redraw them in. I can actually set the light table up in Mirage so I can see one frame back and one frame behind, so I can do an exact in-between for those lines as they're traveling in scale. And there we go, I think that's about right. And I'm actually going to zoom in one more step because this is like pretty precision work here. I'm going to zoom in, I'm just going to nail those right there. Alias Sketchbook Pro actually has a great little algorithm they've designed where when you zoom in, listen up Mirage people, when you zoom in it sort of resamples the entire screen and doesn't show you any pixels at all. Neato, it's good stuff. Allows you a little more clarity when you're working up close on an image. So that's pretty good. I can sort of zoom out and see if that fringe fix looked okay. And there we go. Yeah, the amount of work that is saved using the Cintiq, if this were a fix, if this whole scene needed to be looked at again, possibly rescanned again, you can do things where you're correcting jitter due to the scan, a side-to-side motion that happens. This whole thing needed to be looked at, maybe some parts re-inked, maybe it has to be reshot under the camera to look at again, to see it in full motion. If it needed to be worked on in any way again, all of these fixes would probably be about a week's worth of time. And versus one day, I believe you could do all of this in one day, given the use of the Cintiq and Mirage. Digitally, you're in a much better world, especially if you've got a tool like this at your disposal. It's invaluable. Okay, in this scene, actually, I'm working in an oversized scene. We have a little girl walking through the snow, and we don't have any footprints for it. We want to make it look like her feet are sinking into the snow a little bit. So using Mirage, I'm going to use the Cintiq here to go in and just paint in little creases in the snow and allow them to stay in the animation as she walks by. It'll be a little tedious, a tedious process, but better than scanning everything in and redoing it by hand. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. I'm going to zoom in on her feet right now and get in really close there, pixel level, and I'll get my pen brush tool, and I'm just going to actually animate those on. I'm going to start on the previous frame. I'm just going to start to add a little bit of a crease there. I'm going to turn on my light table so I can see backward one frame. I can sort of see the line that I drew in the previous frame. And at this point, actually, I'm going to erase a little tiny bit of her foot, turning off my light table. And erase this little part of her foot so it looks like it's sinking into the ground a little bit more. And I'm going to paint that little crease there. I'm going to back off on it a little bit, see how it looks. She's stepping into that snow. I'm just adding little creases. And if I kind of like that little crease, I'm going to just take it and cut it out. I'm just going to stamp it down so that it stays there. And what I do is I zoom in really closely, and I've got this cutout on the end of my pen tip here. I'm going to make it transparent about 70%, maybe about 50%. And I'm just going to make sure it's exactly in place, and I'm going to stamp it down, just click in place, and I'm going to press undo. Then what I do is turn the opacity all the way back up again, and I hit the return key, and on the next frame it will stamp that down exactly in the place that it was before it, and it'll remember the last place I clicked my pen. So I hit return here, and actually I could do this to a series of frames if I wanted to. I think I'll do that. I'll just scroll forward a few frames in the timeline and just hit the return key, and it's going to stamp that down over these frames I've selected. So there it is, staying there. And if I want to add a little more depth to that, I'll go in and just paint in the crease, kind of a crease behind where her foot is leaving the scene, leaving that little footprint. And if you really want to be precise about it, you keep stealing the artwork and stamping it back down again in the same spot. So hit undo, stamp that down, go forward, hit return, make sure that that always stays there. Oop, there we have it. I have to pick that footprint up again. It's all a meditation and a little tedious, but I'd rather do it this way. And actually, let me erase a little bit. Oop. Let me back off. Kind of check that work. You'll be able to see our little girl walking in the snow. What we're trying to simulate here in the end is we're doing basically what's called a pan and scan. And it's sort of the effect that you get when you're in a stationary, let's say you're in a car and you're driving by and the background's kind of going by very slowly, trees are passing by very quickly. Well, in this case, we're doing a sort of a slow version of that. As the viewer is watching this girl sort of walk across, the camera's kind of following her a little bit, and the background is sort of moving accordingly, as if this were a real camera move. So we're trying to create as much natural simulation of what this would look like in the real world as possible. What I've done is loaded in a copy of our dog onto another layer of our scene, and if I move through our sequence, you can see our dog enter the screen, enter, and sort of enters the frame, and he does a little bounding jump through the snow. And he's been kind of trouncing around throughout the snow here. He's got a little stick in his mouth. And what I'm going to now do is merge these two layers together, and I'm going to pick up the entire sequence as an animated brush so that we can do our pan and scan within another scene. And I can then take that, stamp it down, and create that move that we need to create that effect. And I'm going to do that right now. I'm going to zoom out and select all of our frames containing our animation. Actually just merge visible in Mirage, and it's going to take everything and combine it into one layer. Okay, and that's complete. And once I've merged our layers, I'm going to select all of our frames of animation, and I'm going to select the Anim Brush tool. I'm going to now select the entire area that I'm working with, the entire animation. And Mirage asked me, cut out an animated brush, Anim Brush, yes. And let the computer cut that out. Okay. Once I've got this animated brush cut out and on the end of my paintbrush here, I can then go to our bin and drop it in a bin where it is saved. 95 frames of animation will save down to the bin, where I can then call up this brush and use it in another scene. The next thing that I'm going to do is that we're going to create our pan and scan. In order to do that, I've got our dog and our girl merged onto one layer. I'm going to use the Anim Brush feature of Mirage to pick up that entire sequence and drop it down into a new project and do a slight camera move, DVE move as it's called, on that entire sequence. I'm going to do that right now. And I'm selecting all the frames in my sequence and clicking on the upper left, and Mirage asked me if I want to cut out an animated brush. I say yes, and it will copy that entire sequence into memory. Okay. Once I've got that on the end of my brush, I can kind of scan through the sequence and make sure I've got it. So there's the girl and dog bounding through the scene. What I can do then is bring this into a project with just our background. And I have my complete animation. What I want to do is start that at the beginning where she starts walking. I'm going to bring up the effects panel, and I'm going to add an effect, which is a keyframe. I set a keyframe position for our first frame of motion in our animated brush, and I'm going to turn on the preview. And we're going to sort of set her first position up. And I do that by dragging to the right here. What I'm going to do is hit a keyframe here. And sort of position her in the frame where I want her to be in the beginning. And I go to the end of my sequence. The very end of my sequence. And we're going to move in our effects panel, our position, our X position. We're going to move that to the left a little bit. Yeah, we can just check our motion here. See if this is somewhat close to what we want for our camera move. So what I've got here is I've got our girl and dog on our topmost layer. I've set a keyframe for that position of our Anim Brush, and her animation will play, and I've actually keyframed the motion of this event, kind of track along as if there were a camera move happening, and I've picked up the entire background, the entire sequence, and actually at this point we have our dog disappear because there's a cut. The last remaining step would be to pick up our background in the same manner and using the exact same technique do a pan and scan on the background tree, and I'm just about to do that. Using the same technique as the anim brush, using one single frame, I'm going to use the effects panel to apply a keyframe or the keyframer or DVE move to send the background in motion a little bit to simulate that pan and scan. So what I've got here in the end is a nice composite using the anim brush and the Cintiq. I've gone in and drawn the footprints on the girl, merged the dog with the girl layer, did a little bit of a move on that, did a little bit of a move on the background, and we have our final composited pan and scan here. So if I scroll through this sequence, you can see that motion taking place, and she's walking along, blink, and she has a little blink there. And here's our dog bounding into the scene. And that's the end of the scene. There's a cut, and we're done. So being a cartoonist and an illustrator, I have a lot of friends who are not very familiar with digital art or how to use, say, Photoshop or Painter or any of the great natural drawing tool programs there are out there. With the Cintiq, I can take any one of my friends and sit them down and give them the pen and just let them go to town and draw. It really enables someone to create quickly, a lot more quickly than you could have in the past with, say, using a mouse, using any other kind of implement.
Okay, now that you've met Happy Trails Animation and seen how we work, you can basically see how it is possible for a smaller studio to compete with the bigger studios. But let's bump it up a notch. Let's try and find a way to compete with India and Korea. And the reality is, we are doing that. We can produce with 5 people what it takes them to do with 20. And in that, the world is opened up to the independent artist, creator, and designer.
The Cintiq is better than I had ever hoped for. I mean, I had some real doubts, but I have to say that the proof for me has been this week, working on the credits for winter, and then also seeing the Music Planet weekend. We essentially have, it's been seamless. I don't think anybody can tell that we changed technologies, and it's already paid for itself.
The time of today for animation, clear the slate of all the past, come right to the present today. Yes, it's a fun industry, it's a wonderful thing to work in, you get to create art for your living. At the same time, it's a hard world, and there is some harsh realities to it, and I think that a lot of people don't understand the pluses and the minuses. Everybody's looking at the pluses. I get to draw cartoons, but at the same time, there's a lot of other things that you have to trade off, and the world of animation is in a change. It's in a shakeup, and what it's really becoming is, it used to be about process. These big machines built up with people, and you were a piece. You were a carburetor to the engine. And now what's happening is completely different. It is now becoming about content. It is now becoming about concept, less about the machine. And the truth is, it's the software and the technology that's alleviating that machine, which is great because it allows people to compete and anybody to get in to do it. So it's becoming a new thing. Animation is becoming it's a marketing tool. Marketing industries have always used animation because it cuts through a lot of things. And just like they use animation for marketing, you also have to be creative and think about how you can market your animation. And that is where building a studio is going to become what is a studio. It's a creative way of thinking of how to make your concepts, your ideas, marketable. It's really becoming about, what do I do? What can I make? And that is where animation is now having a second revival. It used to be a bunch of artists sitting there with a camera and having to hack at some clay. Wonderful stuff came out that way. Now it's coming back. It's coming back to, what can I create?